Hey, John Hansman here, and welcome back to another edition of the Business and Bytes podcast with myself and my good friend Emilio. How's it going?
How's everybody doing? Emilio Mejia here from South Florida, and our weather's been bad, so I think your weather might be a little better
Oh,
this
well, it's
time
in the
around.
70s. It's nice and cool, warm. It's that definite the changes coming weather that we get in Washington State, where it's nice, but don't let it fool you because tomorrow it could just be dumping rain and feel like October. So,
No, this is monsoon season for us.
yeah. I hope it's nice by the time I come out that way in 4 weeks, 3 weeks.
Yep, 3 or 4 weeks should be here.
So, well, we'll hope for the best. Well, we've got a good show for today. I'm kind of excited about some of the conversations that we're going to have. I don't know if excited is the right word. That sounds mean. There's a lot of stuff going on, and there's a lot of things to talk about. There's some crazy news that's not necessarily. It's not necessarily cybersecurity related, but it's still crazy enough that I think we should talk about it. And if you haven't seen the news, there's a bunch of news out of New York City where they found it was a ton of cellular devices. So they found 300 SIM servers. So this is like things you can use to populate cell phone way or cellular, and 100,000 SIM cards across multiple sites in an operation sites in an operation. And so that basically, I think most of it was all in one location. But what's insane about this is these were used to conduct multiple telecommunication related threats directed toward U.S. senior government officials, and they had enough cellular phone equipment in this place that quite literally it said they could take down the whole cell network in New York City.
Correct. Yeah. So it's kind of something
crazy.
It's kind of something that will resemble kind of like a denial of service attack, right? So if they just flood signals on certain frequencies, then it'll cut communication. And it was possibly aimed at a time where a lot of high-ranking government officials were going to be meeting in New York, and maybe from other countries as well. So I think that's
the UN. Yeah, that's exactly it. They found this just before the UN conference, the UN General Summit that was happening there in New York City. So, I'm not going to say who I think it is, but I think we all have a good idea who that's most likely to be, who seems to be the people who do the most espionage, have the most resources when it comes to technology. Be interesting to see where this goes. And the reason why I bring it up is we're seeing an increase in attacks that are focused at infrastructure. And I think the important thing to realize and talk about is the fact that infrastructure is not just government. A lot of infrastructure is private in the sense that we can have privatized infrastructure, water, sewer, even though it may not be federal government, but some of that's run by local cities and jurisdictions. You look at nuclear. While it's regulated, there's a lot of just energy companies that are private or public companies that are running that infrastructure. There's a lot of attack on infrastructure, and I listen to a lot of podcasts, so there's a lot of conversation happening about cybersecurity and how it relates to how China and potentially other countries are maybe already have technology that's in our infrastructure already. Yeah, and then we look at our main focus is to be talking about medium-sized business. What happens if their goal is to just cripple medium-sized business by allowing their cybersecurity gangs or their cyber criminal gangs to attack our small businesses and be able to and cripple businesses?
I don't think it matters. Of course it matters. No matter what level they hit us at, the impact is just going to be astronomical. Give you some examples. When WhatsApp is out, what does everybody do? Come to Facebook and say what? hey, is your WhatsApp out? And then across the nation, you see everybody posting on Facebook,
Right.
WhatsApp is out. Just something as little as that. It's how a lot of people in the US communicate with people in other countries as well, right? WhatsApp, because it's mostly data.
Yeah.
So that kind of removes the barriers that we used to have before of, my SIM is from here, their SIM is from there. I can't do a direct SMS text message. So now WhatsApp breaks that barrier. WhatsApp is down. That's families that can't communicate. That's maybe business partners in different countries that can't communicate. Just, it goes on, more and more. To your point that it's not just government, power companies are private, right? Down here it's FPL, right? Florida Power and Light, right? Up there, I'm sure it's another reiteration of what that may be. Those are private companies. If those get hit, we're at the mercy of everything that has to do with them. The bigger, let's say something having to do with Apple gets hit, and for some reason that takes down iPhones. What's that? That's 50% of the handset world, right?
Yeah.
Not only in the US, but just everywhere. So it's just, hitting private sector might affect more than hitting government sector to a certain aspect,
Well, especially when you talk about power. And I think what most people fail to realize or fail to think about, unless you've read enough conspiracy books, there's some good fiction books out there about the what ifs, but power controls a lot. And you think your refrigerators running on power, as well as all of our cold food storage, wells and pumps. It's only a matter of time before those things would stop working in the case of a power outage. You probably have 48 hours, maybe 72 hours before all of those, all that food is gone, all of that. Or maybe it could be a little bit more if there's some generator power that's individually powering these facilities, but it's really only a matter of time. And I guess the big point when we look at things like this and we see, bad actors who are trying to do these types of espionage, or they're trying to infiltrate our infrastructure, I think it's important just to realize that there's like a real thing going on here. There's a real war that's being waged against not just our country, but others. And so that brings on the next one that came up here. So the CISA, that's the U.S. Cybersecurity Infrastructure Agency, they actually put out a warning about a vulnerability in one of the leading larger cybersecurity tools that's out there. So it's called, what was it called? It was called Ivanti. And Ivanti is being used by major governments. It's being used by cities, large company organizations. And so they actually had some not infrastructure, but they had some vulnerabilities that, like, literally two of them together, bad actors were able to chain them together to drop malware and gain access to systems. And we're seeing, because I was looking into this, and in the initial article I found, and there's like, well, we don't really know who was hit. Well, literally right next to it, the French government was hit by Chinese hackers exploiting this Ivanti security flaw.
And you mentioned it has its own CVE, right?
Yeah, it has multiple. There's two CVEs, one for each.
Yeah. So for our listeners, I kind of want to just drop some, knowledge there. So CVE is kind of like a library catalog number for computer security bugs, let's call it. When someone finds a security problem in a software, it's given a unique CVE ID so that everyone, whether it's vendors, companies, security people, users, when they reference a bug, they can reference that CVE. So just so any of our listeners that might not be aware of what we're talking about.
It's really handy for us when we're looking at how to fix the CVE, because generally, not only do you have the CVE that comes with what the problem is, but the CVE research also comes with the fix if there's one applicable or available. And once there's one available, you can go in and figure out what the patch is, what the actual fix is for that individual issue. And so, again, this is another example of cybersecurity vendors. And this is where, like, we know, and and I know like we're both selling cybersecurity services, it does prove that some due diligence needs to happen. And you've got to make sure if you're a larger company that's using some of these vendors, like we saw, which one was it that went out like not that long ago, like last year. You
CrowdStrike.
got to make what's that?
Was it CrowdStrike? Is that what
Oh,
you're referring to?
CrowdStrike. Yeah, it was CrowdStrike, and theirs was self-inflicted,
Yeah.
but making sure that you've got a backup plan, or you talk with your vendor about redundancy. You are in communication with them about what's the quickest way to solve these types of issues. And your cybersecurity team should be looking for articles like we put triggers that involve our different tools that we use. And most vendors these days are really good about sending out emails about this stuff. So it's a matter of just making sure if there's an update that needs to be done, your IT team's on them real fast. Like we're generally looking at, I send stuff out to my employees about our firewalls that we manage and monitor, all those different things on a regular basis to make sure that we're staying caught up on those. And I see them most of the time through the news. And that's a lot of times where I see some of these happen. If the vendor hasn't gotten to us yet, I see them in the news, and then we're double checking. So just making sure you're actually having that conversation. If you have in-house IT, I think it's worth just double checking their experience to make sure that they actually know what tools to buy. And I think, I don't know about you, but I worked for a small business for many years. And one of the biggest things about when you have in-house IT is there's this apprehension to buy the right tools. Like our tech guy was running around like a chicken with the head cut off most of the time because the company didn't want to buy a remote tool for him to be able to log in remotely to computers. He could have saved so much time because every time he'd walk across the building, 5 people would stop him and he would get distracted versus he would have had so much more time to be able to serve and take care of things with the right investment. I think that's a really important thing to be thinking
about. I have been there, so I feel his pain. I've been in-house IT, and I've had, I haven't had all the tools per se. So I definitely hear you on that.
Yeah. It's important to have the right tools, the right information, partner with the right vendors to make sure that, we have regular conversations with all of our security vendors to check in on them to see, if we need to be looking somewhere else, or is there anything we need to be knowing about that's happened or come up. And it's really important for your IT team to have regular communication in with your security vendors if you're running solo on your IT and not having a company like ours. And you want to check with your company, make sure they're actually doing that stuff too, and making sure they're actually keeping up on firewalls. Ask them when the last time they updated your firewalls were. Like, are they on the latest update version? Things like that.
Yeah, not to deviate, but whenever we run into co-managed, meaning they have an internal IT department, that's some of my favorite conversations because I'm like, if you guys get on our stack, I'll give you access to our RMM. We're gonna blow your mind. Like you have no idea what you're gonna be able to do now, just from your desk to the whole company, the whole business, and the level of where you can take things. So
yeah, I love co-managed too because it gives you just the ability to give them our tools that we're using and include them. And most of the time, the IT guys are like, "Heck yeah, let's go!" Like you mean I get all this stuff that you already have? Like most IT guys are excited about co-managed because it gives them extra cybersecurity, trust, and it gives them the ability to have tools that they didn't have before. That's totally true. Yeah. Yeah. I was like, where was that when I was an IT guy in a private company?
I hear you.
Oh, man. Well, so I want to talk a little bit while we're talking about some of these things that are coming up about insurance. Now, I'll give the disclaimer. We're not insurance people. But I was having lunch last week and I'm going to try and see if I think he said he'd be willing to get on the show, but I was having a conversation with an insurance agent who's an old friend of mine, actually an old roommate of mine. And we were sitting down for some good old Mexican food and talking about insurance and cybersecurity insurance and the differences, and had a really good conversation about that. And I was just poking his brain about why insurance companies aren't necessarily selling. Like there's some out there, like the main. I'm understanding some of the main companies are going to start moving into cybersecurity, like where they're going to actually maybe attach it to errors and omissions and have a big, $1 million or $2 million cybersecurity policy. And so I was having a conversation with him about, what's taking so long, because there's really only like 3 companies out there that are doing cybersecurity standalone. And I think that there's been this conversation about insurance companies have to try to figure out how to mitigate their risk if they're going to move into that product. Like they know that it's a thing, but if the way I look at it, an insurance company, obviously they're there to make money. Excuse me. So their goal is to make sure that they have a way of collecting that money without having to put it out, as a, that they have a way of putting that money, making that money, not having to spend it because somebody has a cybersecurity attack. So companies are trying to figure out how to navigate, how do we add a cybersecurity product and still make money at it? Because if we just give it out and don't have any requirements for businesses on how they're supposed to protect themselves, they're just going to lose money. And obviously an insurance company can't do that. And it reminded me, as I was talking to him, about a story from several years ago, way more, like a decade or more ago, that has nothing to do with cybersecurity whatsoever, but it's a good idea and shows how cybersecurity insurance parallels just with regular insurance. So my dad years ago was coming down one of the local mountain passes. I know you don't know what those are, Emilio, because you live in Florida, but mountains are these really big, so he's coming down a mountain pass, and he had a guy whose truck was on fire, like the brakes were on fire, and this guy was smoking. So he pulls up next to the guy, and he's like, my dad's pointing to his brakes, and he's like, yeah, I can't stop. So my dad bravely, which is crazy, he had a pretty big truck, like a 3,500 truck. So he got in front of this guy who had I think it was, if I remember, it was a VW Bug, and actually stopped the guy with his truck. He actually got in front of him.
The brakes.
On the brakes. He slammed on the brakes enough there was damage to his truck, and he totally saved this guy. Literally, by the time my dad stopped these guys' vehicle, the whole thing caught on fire enough where apparently the guy was able to save his guitar, but that was about it. He must have been a hippie or something. I don't know what happened. But when my dad went to go submit an insurance claim, they said, hey, you're the one who caused this.
Oh, wow.
You're the one who is actually responsible for this event. So you're on your own. You've got to go get this fixed yourself. And while, it's not exactly the same because he did make the choice to save someone's life, a lot of people who are in business today are making the decision not to do anything. I had a statistic earlier, and it was in an event that I was talking at, and I don't remember where the statistics were, but basically it was something like 60% of small businesses are not ready for a data breach.
Oh, absolutely.
60%, right? We see that every single day. And I hear things that are crazy. Like
I think the number's higher, but
I'll just buy new computers. I'll just quit my job. I'll just, it's just a big scam anyways. I'll just restart. And what most people don't realize, especially depending on what kind of business you're in, you don't just get to restart. Like you don't just go buy all new computers, especially when everything now is so data heavy. You're not just going to go buy new computers. You've got to think about, where did all that data go? What kind of data was stolen? Like I was just talking with somebody just recently who had a full-blown theft of data. Like the company came back to them after they had a data breach, and they literally had a full-blown emergency where they had to go and like send emails to all their clients. They had to pay for all the remediation. They had to decide whether they were going to pay for the data breach, whether they were going to pay the ransom because it was a ransomware attack, and they had to make really hard decisions. And when you think about that, most businesses they're not prepared to make the decision not to pay or to pay. They're not prepared to know how to recover their data, and they're sure as heck not prepared to pay out the money that it costs when a cybersecurity accident happens.
Absolutely. And I think you said 60%. I'm going to go on a limb here. I think it's more than that. When I do my presentations and my CSRAs, and I ask those questions, and I say, how much would you be willing to pay to get your data back? And deer in the headlights, right? The way that they just stare at you, if it's in person or virtual, it's basically a deer in the headlights. This is not something that you wake up and you think about, right? This is not something that comes up in your conversation over lunch with your finance person or your business partner. Yeah. If your IT or cybersecurity person isn't having this conversation with you, or your insurance person isn't having this conversation with you, then you're oblivious that it exists, right? So that's to that point. To your other point of insurance companies not kind of going gun-ho because they don't know how they're going to make their money or not make their money. This is one of the reasons why they're making it so difficult to get coverage. Why? Because, as I like to tell people, insurance companies don't like to lose. So the only way they don't lose is to put so many regulations and check boxes on their applications that, they're like, all right, this person might lie about this. Now we can say they're negligent. Now we don't have to pay the claim, and I can go on for days about this, but, their goal is to not pay that claim for you.
Well, and let's be honest.
Until they can get it really good, they're not going to want to do general coverage for everybody. Now, once they find the niche, like, all right, if we do this a lot, we can neglect a lot of these, which they're already doing. Then it'll be a little bit more open to the public, let's say. But I absolutely agree with
you. I think the whole deal is, I mean, if you're in the shoes of the insurance company who has to be profitable, they got shareholders to talk to, to manage. They've got to be profitable. They've got to make money. Like no one gets into business to like lose. They've got to find ways to do it. And if the solution is really simple, and you can say, hey, we know that these 10 or 15 things in general prevent cybersecurity attacks, why wouldn't you say, this is the only way you can get insurance coverage? Why wouldn't you fight for that? Because like no one really wants to, like, no one wakes up in the morning like, I think I want to have a cybersecurity attack. That sounds like fun.
Yeah,
no one does. I don't think people do it on purpose. I think more people just put their head in the sand and they're just more willing to accept the risk and hope that it's not as big as it could be.
I think they just kind of like, well, I've never been struck by lightning, so maybe I won't get hacked. I think it's more likely you get hacked than you get struck by lightning. And I tell people that all the time.
Yeah, especially even in Florida, right? You guys, my mom was paranoid about taking showers during lightning storms. But in some way, form, or fashion, every organization is going to have some kind of cyber incident. It's just a matter of how big it is and how prepared people are for it. And the bigger your company is, definitely the more risk you have. But the smaller your company is, the less money you have to deal with it if it comes up. I think that's the other thing. Like MGM, when they had their giant cybersecurity attack, 2 years ago now, they had the cash flow. They probably used some form of insurance to help pay for it. But inevitably, they're not going to go out of business because of one cybersecurity incident, almost no matter how big it is. because it's MGM. They've got money sitting in places. Is it going to affect their stock prices? Probably, but they're not going to go under. Unlike somebody like a small business who, if they have an incident that costs them $200,000, even $100,000, they're cooked. They're done. And most people don't realize all the different the parts to a cybersecurity incident. That you've got to hire a lawyer, you've got to work on what caused it. You've got to figure out how to remediate. You've got to go through the process of potentially hiring a high-level cybersecurity person, especially if you have ransomware, because you don't want to turn everything back on and then be reinfected again.
Agreed.
And most people haven't played through those incidents with, like, I was at a cybersecurity conference last week. And one of the coolest parts of the whole cybersecurity conference was they had a guy who came in and did tabletop exercises. So for those who don't know, we in the IT industry will do tabletop exercises where we'll walk through a scenario with people and say, what do you do here? What's the plan? And he did a full tabletop exercise with a room full of like probably 200 people, and separated people in the tables. Had a really cool scenario. Everybody had to act as a different person on the team. So like I was the CEO, we had a CFO, we had a CIO, we had all these different positions. And they would change the scenario on us right in the middle of it. And it was super fascinating to listen to how everybody was responding differently and how doing a tabletop exercise actually makes you think about it more.
Absolutely. It's funny you're saying this because I just had a CSRA presentation last week, and this is everything that I'm trying to inform and educate people on. Like, if we're in an incident response situation, what does your receptionist do? Do you call your attorney first? Do you call your insurance company first? Do you call your IT person first? Do you call your CEO first? Like, it's like a fire drill, right? You need to know what happens in the case of an emergency. Same exact thing for cybersecurity. In the case of a breach or a compromise, what should each person do, right? The first thing you do when you go on a cruise is you do a fire drill. So you know what boat, or I think I call it monster or something like that. Which one are you assigned to, right? You're assigned to A, you're assigned to B, you're assigned to J, you're assigned to H. So in the case that this boat starts to sink, you know which lifeboat you should be on. Same thing with cybersecurity, right? In the case that your business is breached or hacked, what is the first thing you should do, right? Is there a break glass in case of emergency? Do you unplug something, right? Do you just whatever that is, it needs to be known, it needs to be rehearsed, and it needs to be planned.
Yeah, 100%. And I think most companies don't even remotely think about that. They don't even have an idea what they would do. And so I think it's worth working on planning that out. In fact, I'm going to look for the product and put it online somewhere. If you follow me on Facebook, I'll put it online. But there's actually a deck of cards you can buy. And I wrote it down. I got to look through my notes from that cybersecurity conference. You can buy a deck of cards that walks you through a tabletop exercise. And so I thought that was really crazy and fun. I was like, I think I'm going to get that.
Send those to me offline. I'd like to have that as part of like my onboarding or kickoff meeting in person, maybe.
Yeah.
And kind of take my clients through that.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. And you can buy, I know it looks like CISA, the government website actually has a I found it actually. It's called Backdoors and Breaches. So they actually have, I'm going to throw this on the main chat for those of us, so people who are on like Facebook and LinkedIn might be able to get it. But I mean, they actually have a deck of cards you can buy, and it's actually like a way to actually practice, which I think is cool. I'm totally going to buy it and actually run with it. So yeah, it's pretty cool. Well, anything else? We've been going for 30 minutes. I want to definitely make sure we're a little bit delayed on getting a show out this week. I think next week it'd be worth it to talk some more about policy and AI. I think that's going to be our next conversation for next week. But yeah, if there's anything you want to talk about before we adjourn?
No. I think for what we were trying to accomplish today, I think we hit the nail on the head with a couple of the articles, and then fast forwarding to insurance, which I know is something we wanted to touch on. So no, I think we're good for today.
Awesome. Well, thanks for being here, guys. If you enjoyed our 30-minute podcast, definitely like and subscribe on all the major podcast places. And you can also find us on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and pretty much everywhere. We're all over the place. I don't think we have an X account, but that's okay. So I look forward to seeing you guys. If you want more information about these playing cards, reach out to one of the two of us on Facebook, and we'll go ahead and get you a link. So look forward to seeing you guys next week. Thanks for being here, and we're grateful to have you here. Thanks.